And now CNN senior political reporter Nia Malika Henderson, senior political analyst Mr. David Gergen, national security analyst Ms. Juliette Kayyem, the author of Security Mom, a great book by the way, and military analyst Major General James Spider Marks. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us. Happy President's Day, by the way. Let's start with you, General Marks. What can you tell us about Lieutenant General H.R. Mcmaster?
Don, that's a wonderful choice. H.R. Mcmaster has a tremendous reputation in the military, and he's a very highly regarded PhD, so he's both a soldier and he's a scholar. He's got incredible combat qualifications from time in Iraq and elsewhere in the Mideast. What's good about H.R. is that he's an iconoclast. He came up, as he was progressing through the ranks in the military after his graduation from West Point. He was identified early on during Desert Storm. He won the Silver Star and he was identified as one of those leaders that would really take us through the next generation. But sadly, what happened, for whatever reason, he was kind of pushed aside. I think it was because he was speaking out about the type of leadership that's necessary to move this military forward. He's the author of a book that is incredibly damning about the Department of Defense during the Vietnam War called Dereliction of Duty. And I think many embraced that and looked at HR and said, I don't know that we need this type of criticism this vocally in the military. And it took a couple of selections for general officer to finally get him over the threshold and get him into the ranks of the general officer, which was long overdue. Now he's accelerated through and he's doing incredible things for the military. He is a strategist of the first order, which is what you really want in that position.
How's that defiance going to play out in the White House, though? In a Trump White House, especially?
Well, I got to tell you, the primary issue is going to be how is he going to comport, how is he going to work with the rest of that national security staff, to include Mr. Bannon. Having a policy guy in the National Security Council would not have been my recommendation, but I got it. That's a done deal. In military terms, that's a decision. It's been made. Put it to the side. That should not be, and it will not be, HR's first battle to take on. That would be a death knell to him immediately. So he'll walk into that position. His first job is going to have to be able to establish what are the top 3 to 4 priorities in terms of our foreign policy, our international engagement. That's what he needs to do first and foremost, and he'll do that certainly with Jim Mattis in the Defense Department, John Kelly over in DHS, certainly with Rex Tillerson in State. That makes up the key bodies within the National Security Council.
Okay.
That needs to be going forward. In fact, I would suggest the President needs to have a speech right now that says this is what our priorities are for our foreign policy moving forward.
Well, let's talk more about how this affects the National Security Council. Juliette, does this pick mean, what does this mean for the National Security Council, considering you still have a political operative like Steve Bannon, which the General referred to, with a seat at the table?
Well, from folks I've talked to today, there's a sense of relief. I think that you have an adult, someone as qualified as Spider was saying, regarding not just policy, but also operations, someone who's been out in the field. From the agency perspective, because remember, the role of the National Security Advisor is also to guide DOD, the State Department, hear from them, DHS, what do they want, CIA, is to open the lens wide enough so that the President himself gets the best advice. Where I'm less optimistic is I'm not sure whether Bannon has a seat at the table or whether he's running a parallel National Security Council that is sort of not transparent to the national security staff. If that's the case, then we're going to see conflict continuing in the future. But finally, the most important thing, as Spider was saying, is we now, it's a month. It's time to be president in the sense of you have to get some policies going. There's massive confusion out there. I just made a quick list. Do we take the oil or not take the oil? Conflicting statements from the administration. Israel, 1 state or 2 state. China, do we recognize Taiwan or not? NATO, are we for it or against it? Torture, are we for it or against it? You have so many different pieces running around going now that my hope is that now the new National Security Advisor can begin to have a consistent and coherent national security policy. We may agree or disagree with it, but at least we'll have something to debate. Now it's just a lot of confusion.
There should be on the same page. I saw you shaking your head there a lot, David Gergen, especially when she talked about parallel national security advisors, or national security at least.
Well, Don, Overall, this is a superb choice, one that any president would be proud of. General McMaster is not only known for his iconoclasm, as Spider talked about, he is an iconoclast, but very importantly, he's a strategist. And this administration needs a strategist on international policy. There's great confusion in the world about what our priorities are, what we're trying to achieve over the long haul. Are we trying to play with Russia and China? Are we trying to play with Russia against China? Where are we trying to go in the EU? You can talk about all sorts of issues, but to go about Juliet's issue, I also think there's still an unresolved question about whether these other power centers in the White House are going to be challenging him. Are we going to have a shadow national security unit under Bannon? Is indeed Jared Kushner going to be a shadow Secretary of State? He seems to be out there on his own, talking to his father-in-law, bypassing the Secretary of State. What's going to be really important for General McMaster is to bring coherence and bring authority and bring a hierarchy to this process, so you don't have these competing power centers. And the one thing he does not have is a lot of experience in Washington and in the Pentagon playing the power games of Washington. Yeah. So he's going to have to learn these very quickly and get on top of things.
Nia, let's talk more about how we got here and the politics playing out, because McMaster is replacing the ousted National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn that we discussed so much here on this network, and it's been discussed everywhere else. We're hearing from the Vice President for the first time about Flynn's conduct. Listen to this.
I would tell you that I was disappointed to learn that the facts that had been conveyed to me by General Flynn were inaccurate. But we honor General Flynn's long service to the United States of America, and I fully support the President's decision to ask for his resignation.
I want to get your response to that, but now that the President has filled this vacancy, at least on this issue, Nia, is this a reset for the White House?
You know, I think it is, and as everyone said, McMaster in many ways couldn't be more different than Flynn. A lot of folks in the intelligence community and on the Hill not big fans of General Flynn, and McMaster is certainly getting a different sort of reception, as we heard from the panelists here. I do think on the question of Flynn, this idea, and in fact that he lied to the Vice President, that is still lingering. We're still going to have a Senate Intelligence Committee look into that. It's still unclear as to why Flynn actually felt he had to lie to the Vice President, given the fact that the President himself had said it would be okay if he talked to Russia about sanctions. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that issue is going to go away. So it's not quite a reset in terms of dealing with the Flynn controversy. That's still very much going to be around, as there are all of these investigations into this administration's relationship to Russia, not only in the campaign phase, but as the administration in the White House now. You saw, for instance, folks on the Hill reaching out to the White House to make sure they're preserving records around all of this. But listen, this is a good day for this White House in terms of this pick. A lot of these issues still to be resolved, though, in terms of Flynn, as well as what actually happens to Bannon. Does somebody like K.T. McFarland, also who's gotten some scrutiny, does she remain on that National Security Council? A lot of people felt like she might have been in over her head in terms of that position, and in terms of some of the things she said previously that sort of raised some eyebrows. So we'll see, but it is day one in terms of McMaster.
General Marks, I want to talk to you a little bit more, because you know, Nia is talking Russia now. The Senate Intelligence Committee asking the administration to preserve records on Russia. What's your take on all this?
Well, you know, there's a reasonable man standard, I think, that needs to be wrapped around all of this in terms of this incoming administration and their communications with their Russian counterparts. First of all, as has been said multiple times on this air, it's really just doing your job. You're trying to set the table for what you intend to, how you intend to engage with friends and allies and adversaries going forward. Nobody would invoke the Logan Act as a result of what took place. But I think there's a notion of frequency, volume, and periodicity in terms of those communications. And what probably should have happened was there's a single point of entry in terms of communicating with different nations and different entities as we, the new inbound administration, get ready to take over. Here are the list of the interrogatives that we want to ask. Here are the list of the issues that we want to discuss. But nobody's negotiating a thing. All we're doing is we're essentially establishing establishing an agenda as we move forward. That's called doing your job. Sadly, that thing got out of control, and I think it was more characterized more like an Oklahoma land rush than anything else.
All right. Stick around, everyone.